second shifts have already gotten to where they need to be. School, for the most part, was canceled today, which gave people the ability, I think, to spend most of this morning anyway, digging out and dealing with their own circumstances and situation. But I think it's really important that we execute. I mean, we got 1,000 calls to constituent services yesterday up in the governor's office, and we were chasing down cabinet secretaries and emergency response officials and local officials to try to make sure that we got as many of those dealt with as we could. I mean, this is part of what people expect us to perform at a high level on, because it's fundamentally a public safety, public sector activity.
This is the kind of nitty-gritty that really floats your boat, isn't it?
I find this stuff to be interesting and important, and it's especially like if you're in Nantucket right now, the scrambling that we're doing to try and figure out how to solve their power outage is exactly the sort of thing that they would expect us to do. I do find the back and forth around the actual execution and follow through on plans and policies that this involves to be interesting, and as I said yesterday, the coordination between the federal folks, the state folks, and the local folks. A lot of the nonprofits too. The Red Cross drives a big piece of the shelter activity. There are a lot of local folks involved in the shelter work as well. I mean, there are just a lot of hands on deck in this, and everybody for the most part is trying to do the same thing.
Last couple of things, sir. Every plowing contractor in the state right now out there working hard in this storm is thinking, oh boy, when am I going to get paid this year? It's a chronic issue. Those bills go unpaid well into the summer, following the winter, and sometimes even later. Can you offer any hope for an improvement in that system?
Well, I do have a $765 million deficit that we're dealing with, although the snow budget, we had spent almost nothing out of it heading into this storm. So
this will grit it, won't it?
Yeah, it will certainly have a big impact on it. But I certainly think, if you're going to be a good steward of the state's fiscal resources, you ought to pay your bills on time, and I understand that.
Yeah. Last thing, sir. Ever since Hurricane Sandy, there were changes in the way the feds handled both floodplain designation and federal flooding insurance. A lot of outcry about that here in the Commonwealth. Everywhere, okay? And recently I saw that I believe Quincy was able to obtain a favorable federal reaction to a relief plan that they had proposed. What's your understanding of the state of the art of that and what people affected by these flooding areas can look forward to down the road here?
I think this is going to be a back and forth between locals, states, and the federal government. I don't think this issue's been fully resolved. I think it's going to continue to use a really bad pun, ebb and flow for the course of the next couple of years. I think the Quincy case you talk about is one example of a particular set of facts that led to a different decision. But the good news with respect to flooding as far as this storm is concerned is, for the most part, the stuff we've seen is pretty consistent with what people would have expected and anticipated and planned for. We haven't seen a lot of significant activity that got outside the bounds of what would normally happen in a storm like this, which is good.